Not working. Oh. Hey, can you hear me? Awesome. So I'm just going to start off the debate by stating my point of view and defining the term children's literature. So I believe that children's literature should have darker themes for 3 points. One, it teaches kids to be emotionally mature. Two, it teaches kids how to be more aware of the world around them and how, in reality, things can be darker and very uncomfortable. We shouldn't shield children from that. And my third point is that it gives them a healthy emotional outlet in case, say, kids are experiencing darker emotions themselves and don't understand why or how and just need another outlet to express themselves that doesn't involve self-harming or going on to darker and harder things. So, according to the Library of Congress, children's literature is defined as material written and printed for information oriented at children and young adults. One of the key arguments I hear from your point of view in regards to why children's literature shouldn't be darker is because children probably can't handle it, they're not ready for it, or mature enough to. Now, I can understand this is a valid argument and this is a valid point. However, I believe that as far as literature taught in school, it is a common theme to be taught in the classroom as long as context is provided. Now, I have a minute left, but I feel that I stated my point, and I'm going to turn it to you.
Okay, can you hear me? Okay, all right. I'm a little sleepy, so I want to try to make the best out of this. All right, so the title of this debate is Children's Literature should include more dark themes and content. The only definition I intend to really stand firm on is the definition of what is children's literature. For the sake of this debate, I would like to lock in the ages of 5 to 12 for children's literature. Next, I would draw a parallel of sorts. Okay, so the Motion Picture Association has a rating system that they use for motion pictures. I believe everyone is familiar with these. They are G, PG, PG-13R, and NC-17. These categories are step-by-step levels that take into account the mental maturity of children and the level of general acceptance that parents have for their kids and the materials that their kids watch. The rating G stands for all ages admitted. This means that nothing would offend parents for viewing by children. This would be the category most like the children's literature section of a bookstore. PG-13 is a rating which means some material may be inappropriate for children under 13. This would be the category most like the young adult section of a bookstore. Rated R requires accompanying parent or adult guardian. This would be the section most like the adult section of a bookstore. The reason I'm using the movie theater parallel is because I'm aware most of the judges do not have children, but I bet they do watch movies. I believe my opponent is going to try to win this debate by speaking about the older side of the children's literature dynamic as opposed to the side of the youngest person. Going back to my movie rating metaphor, if a parent feels their child is at the advanced side of the spectrum and is ready to be exposed to more dark themes at the movie theater, the parent can simply purchase the ticket for the movie, the more mentally capable child to watch a higher rating. Likewise, if the parent feels that the child is more mentally mature and is capable of handling darker themes, then the parent can then let their child move up to the next higher section, the young adult section. As I've defined, 5 to 12, the age for children's literature is from 5 to 12. I would like my opponent to explain why she feels a 5-year-old, which is on the shallow end of the spectrum, should be more exposed to sex, suicide, and death before he or she has even learned multiplication yet. The older kids in the category can just move up if they are mentally ready, while because of vocabulary and maturity, the younger kids cannot. And I will close out my open comments with one last metaphor. The height restriction on a roller coaster ride is not set for the tallest person, but for the shortest person who can safely ride, which is just saying that children's literature is 5 to 12. It is bad to put a child that is at the low end of the spectrum, the 5, 6, 7, 8, and expose them to the darker themes like sex and suicide and stuff like that when they are not mentally capable, as opposed to the kids that are on the high end, the 11 and 12, who can simply just go from children's literature to the young teen, the young adult category if they feel that they need.
Okay, I do agree you have a point, and I will confine my argument to the age limit that you said, because I actually have a few examples that would actually fit towards the younger spectrum that you've mentioned. So you said that I'm referring to teaching 5, 6-year-olds to teaching sex, suicide, and death. That is incorrect. And as to what we regard to as darker has changed over the years. For example, the Grimm fairy tales have been taught to children for centuries before they became Disney-fied. They were very dark, and they were meant to teach children lessons. Now, I do agree with you, 5 years old, 5, 6, 7 years old shouldn't have to learn about sex or suicide, but in a proper context, maybe they can learn about death, to learn how to handle a family's death, because there are children, unfortunately, that young who've experienced the passing away of a pet, a parent, or even a grandparent. Now, on to a more literal example. I have did some research, and I found you probably are familiar with the book Where the Wild Things Are, correct? So this is my example, or this is a book aimed towards 5, 6, and 7-year-olds, and even younger than that. When Where the Wild Things Are came out first in 1993, there was actually a large controversy of whether it was appropriate for children at all. For the most part, that is not an issue to this day. However, parents have said that the book was too scary for their children, and that it teaches them bad manners on how to disrespect a parent. Obviously, that has changed over years. And I want to go back to your movie example, because the rating system for movies, just like for children's literature, has changed as well. So my example for that will be Who Framed Roger Rabbit. When it first came out, it's rated PG. However, given the context of the material that's in that movie, to today's standards, it would probably be changed to PG-13. So if you as appropriate, I think is important to keep in context of the time period when the movie was written, when the book was written. And if you feel like the book is too dark for children, it is very important to talk about the context of that. And now I'm going to turn the mic over to you.
Okay, so it's important to mention that there are already books that have a dark theme, and so this is really a debate about adding more dark themes. And so in my open, I spoke of alternative to adding more dark themes and content to children's literature. This alternative is that those children who already simply move up to the next higher group, the young adult group. For my second argument, I'll provide evidence as to why this is a better alternative than flooding the children's literature section with sex, murder, suicide, and whatever else classifies as dark. This is important because this is important because my opponent is going to try to sell the audience on the beautiful, serene picture of darker content in children's literature, helping the development of kids by exposing them to a few of the darker things that happen in life. But I keep in mind, this is real life. This is not a fairy tale. So there's an article in Psychology Today called "Overexposed and Underprepared: The Effects of Early Exposure to Sexual Content." The article starts out by stating that children are being sexualized early in part because they are exposed to sexual material in movies, television, music, and other media earlier than ever. According to Psychology Today, early exposure to sexual content in the media may have a profound impact on children's values, attitudes, and behaviors towards sex and relationships. There was a special section in the article on the children 8 to 9, which is the median age of the children's literature demographic. And this article says that even if young children cannot understand sex or its role in relationships, the images they see can leave a lasting impression. It's a basic premise of marketing that what we watch, read, and direct our attention to influences our behavior. By saying that children's literature needs more dark themes and content is to say that what they have now is not sufficient, and that it's okay for our children 6 to 12 to be targeted by publishing companies as readers of books that glamorize sex, glamorize rape, glamorize murder, glamorize suicide. Because as children's literature would grow to include more dark themes and content, these would not just include books that paint relationships and life in a positive and enlightened way. This would also include the dark side of life that no child should ever be exposed to before they are ready. The tag children's literature section is a bookstore equivalent to internet filters parents place on the laptops of their kids, or the parental controls that parents place on the Netflix and Hulu prescriptions of their kids. No one tells the Disney Channel that they need to include more dark themes and content. What is there is what is there. And when parents feel the child is ready to be exposed to more, they allow them to watch the other channels, which in this case would be letting kids move up to the young adult section. So in 19 seconds left. So also I want to hit on, like I said, there's already dark content there, and dark content from the 60s and 70s is not the same as the dark content now. As we know, life has gotten a lot darker, and kids are not ready for this extreme.
All right, I would just like to correct you on one point that you made, saying that I am advocating for more sex and more suicide in children's literature. That is not what I'm arguing. What I mean by darker content, which I think is my mistake of not clarifying earlier, I am more talking about how to handle negative situations such as discrimination, such as racial or sexual, and not to take away the current books that already have darker context in that. So I am not advocating for teaching 5, 6, or 7-year-olds sex. I am not advocating suicide. I am advocating that children do learn how to handle, learn how to identify discrimination. For example, this will also pertain to your age limit. To Kill a Mockingbird, recently this year, is being banned, has been removed in a county of Mississippi because the content apparently made some parents and some students uncomfortable. And you are right that my main point is that literature is used as a tool to teach kids about the real world, and it is. However, I feel that sheltering kids, it's not necessarily to be responsible. We need a balance of both dark children's literature and lighter literature. Literature that doesn't have some dark content, something lighthearted for the children to read to balance out the darkness. But the darkness is there to give us children a sense of reality and everything is going to go well. They need to understand that things won't. Yes, they will try, and they can try hard, but things won't always go their way. They also need to learn how to recognize tough situations so that they could either defend themselves and the others around them with verbal communication, and also to maybe, hopefully, one day get themselves out of a dangerous situation. And literature is a good outlet for that. Another point is that kids, even young as 10, 11 years old, have thoughts of suicide already. So if they are exposed to literature of a kid who knows maybe their age dealing with suicide and getting help, it might inspire them to go get the proper help that they need rather than community suicide. I'm not saying your study is wrong, but I have a counter study that says that when kids are young and they are taught to suicide, they actually have a higher rate of going to get help rather than committing suicide. So that is one important aspect I think is important to keep in mind. And I want to reiterate that I'm not supporting teaching 5 or 6-year-olds sex in their books. Back to you.
Okay, so far I've spoken of on a feasible to increasing the amount of dark themes and content that exist in dark literature. The second, I've shown exposing young children to dark themes before they're ready is not a good thing. Now, my opponent is, like I said, as I said that my opponent would do, it's you can't, once you say that there should be more dark themes, because my opponent is bringing up a lot of stuff that exists now, but not a real reason why there should be more dark themes and content. As we talk about adding more and more dark themes and content, you can't pick and choose and say, hey, we're only going to take the lighter, the very important stuff as dark themes and content, and only going to have those. Once you open the gateway to say we're going to add more dark themes and content in, you're going to take the good stuff in with the bad stuff. And yes, that is going to be some of the things that we do not want kids to be exposed to, like the things that I brought up, which was sex, rape, murder, suicide. These are things that younger children should not be exposed to and are not mentally ready for. And like I said, the important part, the question that I brought up in the beginning was, I would like my opponent to explain why she feels that 5-year-olds should be more exposed to sex and death before he or she has learned multiplication, which is saying that, yes, while some things are probably good to expose 11 or 12-year-olds to because they're at that age of being able to question stuff, the age group for children's literature is like 5 to 12. So what about those younger people that's going to be in the same book section? You can't pick and choose this and say we're only going to take the lighter side of the dark themes and content, because the lighter stuff that's teaching children how to cope and do all this and that would not be the dark themes of content. Those are more like self-help books, and self-help books aren't dark themes of content. So with that being said, I'm gonna go ahead and pass the mic back to my opponent.
All right, that is a fair point. I cannot say we can open this and then select you. You are correct about that. However, I think you are also underestimating the capabilities of 5 and 6-year-olds and how well they can understand certain things such as death, especially if they experience themselves. Kids cannot understand the idea of self-help books the way adults can. But what they can do is they can reenact the world through their imagination. And if they see characters who they grew up with, that they love, experience things such as death, which I think is an important topic to even discuss to kids even that young. I've had younger cousins who had their grandfather pass away at that same age, and they had trouble coping. So in response, I wrote a book about his death, and their parents have said that the book has helped them a lot with that, because they were able to feel they have a book to connect to due to their experience. Now, I'm not saying that all right, backtracking back to your point about sex. In a way, sexual education has also, which is a separate debate, but I'm just going to touch on it for 1 minute. Our sex ed in the US is very too Puritan, and that leads to a lot of issues that are prudent for another day. If kids that young are going to learn about sex, then it should also be in a book about, in a context where they can learn that it's not for everybody. And with more information, the safer children are. Now, I'm not saying your study is wrong, given I don't know where your study came from or who did the study, nor the people who did it. But in general, in my past experience and what I have seen around scientific researchers from peer-reviewed studies over and over the years, that more information on most topics are generally more helpful for children than harmful. Are there drawbacks? Yes. I'm not going to deny some kids will not be able to handle it the same way. Some kids are more mature than others. But it's not fair to the kids to completely shield them from everything. Everything has, while yes, it's important to shield them. Don't get me wrong. I have younger brothers who I grew up with and I want to protect them. I have younger cousins who I want to raise and protect them. But I want to be them informed. And sometimes literature is that way. And I know I've overstated this, and I'm sorry about that, but this is something that is very crucial. And I'm going to turn back the mic to you because my time is running out.
Okay, so in closing, to vote pro in this debate is like saying that parents who feel their children are not mentally ready to be exposed to more dark materials in parenting, to more dark materials and content, are wrong. If parents feel that their children are mentally ready to be exposed to more dark themes, there is nothing preventing those parents allowing their children to read books from the young adult section, which is 13 to 17. To say that children's literature should include more dark themes and content is also to imply that children who are not exposed to dark themes and content are missing something in their lives. My opponent still not has explained that there is a lack of dark themes and content that exists already, or why we need more dark themes and content. Society is not the judge of what kids should be exposed to. It is the parents if the parents feel that the children should be exposed to more dark themes and content, can make that decision to go ahead and take my child and expose them and tell them, okay, now go to the young adult section, the 13 to 17. The fact is that the children's literature section is from 5 to 12. And like I said I was going to beat that to death, the 5 to 12, because there are a lot of things that 12-year-olds can be exposed to and 5-year-olds should not be exposed to. There is no way a 5-year-old, 5, 6, 7, 8 should be exposed to anything having to do with rape. That is just not right. But to to side with adding more dark themes and content is not only influencing the children that's 11 to 12, but also to those 5 to 12. So the only thing that's blocking these younger kids that we are protecting their innocence from is to have these to kind of have this little gateway that, okay, these extremely dark themes and content of life that we don't want our younger 5-year-olds to be exposed to should be in the young adult section. Because there are some things, and I believe my opponent has already said that there are some things that a 5-year-old, 6-year-old, 7-year-old should not be exposed to. They are not mentally capable of handling that. And so to say that to vote for children's literature should include more dark themes and content is to vote to expose even those younger kids to all this stuff that they are not mentally ready for.
Okay, so what I think is important, and some point I should have brought up earlier, is you mentioned that you have an issue with the idea of society dictating your child what they'd be ready for versus the parent. And in a way, yes, it is a parent's responsibility to do that. However, what you are ignoring is the fluctuation over the years of darker content for children's literature. For example, I'm going to start off with the Grimm fairy tales. I'm sure you know some about them, but for those who don't know them, they are classic children's literature that you know that Disney has reiterated, such as Snow White, Sleeping Beauty. And those stories came from very dark themes. Cinderella's sisters cut off parts of their foot to try to fit in their glass shoe, and then at the end of the story, they had their eyeballs plucked out by birds. These were stories being told by children from 5, 6, 7 years old at that time. Granted, that was a long time ago, and that has changed since. But that does not change the fact that there's also been swinging back to darker themes, such as the novel Huckleberry Finn, which is also taught in middle schools for 10, 11, 12-year-olds. That book is very controversial because of the language used and the dark themes of racism going on. So what you are also ignoring about the idea of darker themes in literature is that it could be used as a tool for children to spot discrimination, such as racism, sexism, that are being used to taught in the schools, such as To Kill a Mockingbird or Huck Finn, as I've stated earlier. Also, another point about your parents and society is that parents are influenced by society of what is going to be appropriate for the children depending over the years. And that, again, has fluctuated over the years as well. So these historical factors have a large impact of the way things are swinging now in regard to how children's literature was so sanitized in the beginning, has been sanitized past few years, but now is swinging back to darker stuff, but it's also being sanitized in a different way. And that is in regards to the visualization of discrimination and how to combat it rather than becoming a norm to be something against. Now back to you.
Okay, so I don't know about you, but I'm almost out of stuff. I'm about to get to the point when I start repeating stuff over and over again. So let me say this. So you continue to bring up books that already exist, that already have dark themes and content. And I think that shows that there's already enough books that have dark themes and content. I don't believe you've shown a reason why there should be more, why there's an insufficient amount of dark themes and content or books that help children cope with the issues that happen now. The whole debate is more dark themes and content, and why there should be more. And like I said, to say that we're missing a certain amount of dark themes and content. Well, what is the right amount of dark themes and content? What is the dark themes? There's a certain amount now, and if the children or the parents feel that they need more exposure to these dark themes and content, the child can simply move up a section to the young adult section. And I believe that is the easier fix than saying, okay, all of a sudden, you know what, now we need more dark themes and content, because I believe I've already shown that more dark themes and content are not just the happy-go-lucky fairy tales books. It also include more darker themes and stuff like that, and is not only going to be exposed to the people who are at the high end of the spectrum, but also those 5, 6, or 7. You know, bookstores right now, the children's literature section are full of toys and story times and stuff like that for the younger kids. To say we need more dark themes and content is now to just start putting more books that expose children to dark themes that we don't want them to be around yet. Which, though, like I said, those also are opening the floodgates to books that do glamorize some of the things that we don't think kids should be around, like sex, rape, murder, and suicide. And I've also shown that in the survey I brought, well, in the article by Psychology Today, that exposing those 5, 6, or 7 is a negative thing, and it also impacts the way they think about things, which is also a bad thing. I am so tired right now. But okay, so with 34 seconds left, I'm gonna go ahead and pass the mic.
All right, so you're right. I have stated several books from the past, and I say those because at that time, when they were published, they were dealing issues of that time. What we need as far as like darker children's literature is I'm talking about books, children's literature that deal with controversial issues that we're dealing with today, because these are the issues that are the children that these kids are growing up with. I cited these samples because these are books that have been written and they have been debated about, not only from when they were first published, but some of them are still debated to this day and have been removed for said reasons. You say you're concerned about the children's maturity, and that is a very reasonable standpoint as a parent, which I do not have, and I will admit that, given that I've been a babysitter and a cousin and an older sister. However, kids, you shouldn't, like, if a kid is ready for darker content, kids should not be denied of being able to access that kind of content, because sometimes, while some parents do have a good idea of where the kid's maturity is at. What's the best way to word this? Kids don't always learn best from their parents, because kids have a biased view towards their parents. So kids still listen to you for punishment, things like that. But in regards to the world, some kids can completely absorb what the parents are telling them, some don't. But the world through literature gives them another outlet to form their ideas and to maybe either reinforce or argue, and kids should have the knowledge of current issues that are going around while they were young and how to deal with them in case there are still issues to this day, such as how Huck Finn is still taught, and To Kill a Mockingbird to this day is still used to talk about the issues of racism, which is quite prevalent to this day. And that is all I have to say. I thank you for coming on and debating with me, and hope you have a good day.
Okay, so I guess this will be my closing. And yes, it has been a pleasure to debate with you. I'm sorry for like continuing to try to kick the time back further and further, but I am thankful that you showed up. So my opponent said in her closing that if the kids are mature enough to, they should be exposed to these darker contents, these darker themes and contents. And I think that is something that my opponent and I agree on. Yes, if the kids are mentally and mature ready. And like I've stated throughout the debate, there is nothing keeping the kid and the parents from, if they feel that the children should be exposed to more darker themes and content, there is nothing that's preventing them from going up to the young adult section and getting those more dark themes and content from there. What we cannot do is expose that whole demographic, the 5 to 12-year-old, to the same amount of stuff, and that is a fact. To say there's I still don't believe my opponent has really shown that there was missing content. By her highlighting the amount of content that already exists, says that there's already a sufficient amount that's there. There's no need for more. And also, yes, there is a fact that, and my opponent wasn't able to turn the fact that by including more darker themes and content, it would put some darker books that younger children should not be exposed to, which also is a point for me. So with that being said, I will go ahead and end the debate and tell my opponent it has been a pleasure and good luck, but not enough luck to actually beat me, but just enough luck to where you feel good and continue to debate on QallOut.
I'm out of time, so thank you.